All I've had today was a chocolate Twinkie.
Part of a well-balanced breakfast.
Yo, sure.
You are listening to the Digital to Dice podcast, episode 14. It's the crossover episode, as we're going to talk about games that were on the tabletop that are now on the computer or the consoles, or games that were on the consoles and the PC that have come to the tabletop. I am Dave.
And I am Ron. How are you?
Not too bad. And we have a special third guest host today, and that would be Edie Sellers from the Gamehounds podcast. Edie, welcome to Digital to Dice.
And I am Edie Sellers. Thank you very much.
So, Edie, you been doing the Gamehounds video game podcast for quite some time, and I know I've been on that for many years. So tell us a little bit about the Gamehounds show before we get into this one here.
Gamehounds has been a video game and video game industry watching podcast since 2008. So we've been on for 11 years now, coming up on our 11th year. And you're one of our hosts. I co-host it with Dave and another person, Nick DiNicola. And every week we talk about news, we talk about reviews of games we're playing, commentary, pop culture, whatever. It's lots of tangents. You're hilarious, Dave. You are amazing. And you've been doing it, gosh, almost, I guess this would be your 10th year, 9th year?
10th year.
Doing it?
I think I was in 2009 I joined the Gamehounds. I was doing the hockey Ratcast show back in 06. And then I started listening to the Gamehounds,
right.
And then I became one of them.
You became a Gamehound. It was a thing we did where we were losing my co-host at the time, and started a second show that was a midweek show, and because we were doing that on Friday nights, the regular show on Friday nights, and we had what we called the Hump Date show, which was on Wednesdays, and did kind of an open audition without actually saying it was an open audition, just saying, hey, we're putting together this show and we want to have little pods within the bigger show. And you did what was it? The Gamehound Sanctuary? No.
Sanctuary. The Sanctuary.
Yeah, the Sanctuary, the Gamehound Sanctuary. And as soon as I heard you and your production quality and your voice, and it was like, that's the guy. That is the guy. And immediately offered you the position to be the third chair.
Yeah.
Actually, the second chair.
Yeah,
at that point,
10 years later, we're still doing that.
10 years later,
we just like we're doing on Ron's channel, the Retro Sports Network, and sometimes on my channel too on YouTube. I think it's just Dave Gardner Videos. We put the Gamehounds onto YouTube. And
yeah, thanks to you. I mean, StreamYard is amazing.
Yeah, last week we did it on my channel, kind of just a willy-nilly thing, and this week we're officially on Gamehounds Vids on YouTube there, and we did like a 2.5-hour show today, and that chat room on YouTube was rocking, and that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was. It makes a big difference. So, I'm now, I was always a little reticent about going on video, mostly because as a female gamer, being on a video stream sometimes can be a little bit intimidating, and it has its drawbacks. And I never want to, one of the nice things about being on a podcast is that I'm slightly anonymous, and that's great. But you have made me a firm believer that video is the way to go. I mean, we're still going to be we do the podcast. You can find us at gamehounds.net. That's gamehounds plural.net. And we're on Spreaker. We do the show live on Spreaker. That's an audio show. And then we're also going to be doing it under Gamehounds Vids, as in video, VIDS. That's on YouTube. And we're doing the simulcast audio stream or video stream with the live audio stream.
Very similar to what we do here. We use Spreaker as well for Digital to Dice. You go to digitaltodice.com, and that goes right to our Spreaker page. And once in a while, we go live on Ron's channel. Ron sets it up, and we do the live streaming on his channel. And Ron's channel, we were talking off air, is growing by leaps and bounds over there. He was talking about his subscriptions are up. I met Ron almost about a year ago this time, right, Ron?
It's been about a year, hasn't it?
Yeah, I did. I was playing.
Wow.
I was playing this football game on the computer, Action PC Football, and I was having a hard time figuring out how to play the game because it was all new. And I go to YouTube, and there's this guy Ron playing this game, and he's showing you how to play it, and he's showing you how to set it up and put in all the custom stuff. And we just got talking and chatting, and I ended up sponsoring his show, and now like both of our channels have really exploded in the last year, and we're part of a really good community here. The friends of the channel, what we call it, the FOC, and we have every time someone goes live, everybody goes and supports the channel, and it's a great community to be with here. And sometimes it's cards and dice. Some people roll the dice on the camera, and other people play the PC games and stream it. And it's been a really a good year. It's been really fun exploring all these games and meeting all the people here. So.
Yeah.
So anyway, yes, the other ways to get a hold of us here on Facebook, we have a group, facebook.com/groups/digital-to-dice, and we have a text line. You can send us a text, 978-751-DICE, 978-751-3423. And as always, leave us a comment on Spreaker or on YouTube, because the podcast goes up on YouTube on my channel once we're done loading up on Spreaker. So today we're going to talk about crossovers. So here we go. Actually, no, first, let's get into what we're playing.
This week on a very special Full House, Kimmy gets flushed down the toilet.
It came with a roadcast. I think it's a nice little transition.
It's great, but that's what it reminds me of. If I was a little bit younger, it would be Hannah Montana and all that.
Alrighty.
So Dave, what are you playing?
All right, so I'll go first, I guess. So let me see. I've gone back and played some video games. In fact, me and Edie, boy, it's been like old times.
It is. Talk about throwback.
Yeah, we started playing Borderlands 3. Now, I played with Al, Red Sox fan, as you know. He plays Borderlands 3, and we played a little bit. And then Edie got it. We've been playing, and we've had a couple of big boss fights in the whole bit. And I think she was streaming one night, too, some of the stuff we had. But Borderlands 3, it's if you like Borderlands 2 and video games, Borderlands 3 is just more of 2. And it's really fun, and it's a game you can drop in and drop out of at any time. And you play with the same person and on your team, and it's just really, really fun. Borderlands 3 is, like I say, Al, Red Sox fan will attest to that. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, and the best thing about it is that it's one of those rare cases where the single player is great and the multiplayer is great. It's a different game, but yet, and it feels different. The way that you play it is different, but it's still just as good single player as it is multiplayer.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun, that Borderlands 3. As far as tabletop games, I am playing more Stratomatic Hockey. I had my uncle come over, and I played my first full head-to-head game.
That's awesome.
Of Stratomatic Hockey. Yep, I sent him a message and said, hey, you want to get together, maybe watch the Patriots game and try this out? He's like, yep. So he shows up at my house, and we set it up on the table down here, and I let him pick the season. I have 6 seasons, so he chose 77, 78. And he took the Bruins, and I took the Blackhawks. And it was Gilbert in net for Boston and Tony Esposito for the Blackhawks. And we just played a game of Basic. And I think it took about an hour to play a game of Basic.
That's not bad at all.
Yeah, and
it really does kind of fly.
And he's never played it, so I was kind of doing everything. And the final score was actually 7-5 Boston. We had 12 goals in that game. And the last 2 games I've played have been really high-scoring games. So I don't know if I'm just rolling the dice just right or if I'm playing it wrong. But
I don't think you're playing wrong. I just think that it's a case of, look, especially the era, where are you going to have it?
It just because he kept getting goalie rating check. And I would roll a 7, and that was a goal on Tony Esposito. And I would get a goalie rating check on Gilles Gilbert, and I'd roll an 8, and that was a goal on Gilbert. And so I think I did it all right. There was just a lot of goals being scored.
Espo was not the world's best keeper.
Not in 77, 78.
Either. And that was the 77, 78 actually was the first season they carded. Be curious because you have the original, I believe the sample teams, Pittsburgh and Toronto.
Yes.
Why they packaged Pittsburgh and Toronto would be like giving you, an expansion pack for Rainbow Six when you're playing Call of Duty.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. But yeah,
but you might want to check to see how much those cards have actually changed, because if that's the season you have, then those, I think that's what you have. But anywho,
but it was fun. Yeah. It's fun playing head to head. In fact, I put a notice out on Facebook.
It's a blast head to head.
And I said, "Does anybody local want to get together and play this? Because I've been looking to do some board games with people, and Strat Hockey be the thing to do."
You might want to think about doing a meetup. Trying to create a meetup group for Stratomatic, because there's a lot of people who love Stratomatic, and it maybe Stratomatic hockey out here on the West Coast would be hard to find people, but certainly Stratomatic on the East Coast.
Yeah, there was hockey.
That's hockey's king out there.
Yeah, there was one guy that posted in Massachusetts, but he was about an hour from me. But I was like, it might be worth a ride to go.
I won't mention the name, but somebody about 90 minutes away in northern Rhode Island.
Oh yeah, Kenny. Yeah, we can go.
I wouldn't mention the name, but yeah,
that's all right. He's a friend of the show.
San Jose hasn't taken the world by storm out there yet.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of hockey fans who really follow the Sharks, but it's by and large, people are not hockey fans out here because we didn't grow up with it. We didn't have the hometown team, that kids were watching when they were little kids. In the next, I would say 10, 15 years, possibly.
Mm-hmm.
But, and also there's no hockey rinks. We don't have a winter.
That's true.
With ice and snow. So you have to have a hockey rink. And given the price of real estate out here, all the hockey rinks that are around have closed and are now either housing or shopping malls or something like that.
Yeah, that makes sense.
The last thing we had was what was it? Ice Palace, I think, in Berkeley, and it closed like 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And that's the closest ice rink that we had. I grew up around an ice rink. There was an ice rink in Sun Valley Mall out in Concord where I grew up, but that closed down years ago. That was, I was in high school, early high school or junior high when it closed down and was turned into a movie theater.
Yeah. I remember Joe Thornton, when he went to the Sharks, he was out there for a few years, and then the Bruins, Carl McLaren, I think, went out to the Sharks as well. And Joe Thornton, I remember the story was Joe Thornton told Kyle McLaren, or vice versa, I forget how it was, who went there first, but they said that you could walk down the streets naked in San Jose and they still wouldn't know if you played for the Sharks or not. They're just not that big into hockey.
Yeah.
And these are names that if they walk down the streets in Boston, there's Joe Thornton, there's Kyle McLaren,
Yeah.
So it's very different out there.
They know the beard.
A side note, on the Gamehounds show today, Edie brought up the fact that EA Sports NHL 20 did the simulation, right, to see who would win the Stanley Cup.
Gosh, darn it. Now I have to look it up because I don't know anything about hockey. So let's see if I can find it. I think I deleted everything.
I never found those games to be super accurate anyway. But then again, when you put 16 teams in the playoffs,
yeah, anything can happen.
As you know from last year, the best teams don't always win.
Yeah, but it was funny who she said won, who ended up in the cup, and I
darn it.
I remember who it was. You said it was
I found it, but now I just got rid of all my notes for this show here. So let's see. It was the Bruins. Let's see. The Bruins winger Brad Marchand will win the Conn Smythe. Is it Smith or Smythe?
Smythe.
Conn Smythe Trophy for being the MVP for the playoffs with 32 points in 25 games.
And how many people did he behead in the process?
And instead of ending their, let's see, the Bruins will defeat the Las Vegas Golden Knights in 6 games.
That's
a stretch. That's a stretch for the Knights to go back, though. Yeah. I thought they were going to say Washington, and they didn't. But.
No. That the Bruins are going to defeat the Leafs, the Lightning, and the Capitals before advancing the Stanley Cup Finals, where they'll beat the Knights to win the cup.
I would be okay with that. I would be okay with that.
I bet you would.
Yeah,
but that's not actually out of the realm of possibility.
No, it's not too bad. I wonder what.
They've been in the league 2 years, and they went to the Cup their first year, and they made the playoffs and ran into a hotter team last year. Yeah. So that's not outrageous.
I'm interested to see what franchise hockey manager is going to say.
Yeah, well, keep in mind that NHL has been a terrible predictor of hockey for the last few years of the playoffs. last 2 years it's been way off. Last year they predicted the Toronto Maple Leafs would win the cup, and in 2017 they said the Jets would defeat the Bruins in the cup, but both the Jets and the Bruins were eliminated early on in the finals. So
that's the thing, is it's just, you just never know. And I guess that goes down to what I've been playing outside of the football for my channel. I actually bought, I don't know, I think we talked about this the last time, but I think I've bought since we recorded, Dave, was the PC version of Stratomatic. Right? Or we talked about that when we did the hockey things last week, right?
I think you said you just got it, yeah.
I just got it, and I picked up the 81-82 season. Luckily, all my codes were able to transfer over. And if you're familiar with Strat at all, Dave, that is actually a big deal. And so I started an 81-82 replay with the Islanders and the Oilers. And so it's interesting in that high-octane era of offense to sit there and play, because when a goalie makes a save on a goalie rating, it is a big deal. So that's been fun. And but by God, when they get into some penalty fests, it becomes a slog.
Yeah, in the 80s that was like that, yeah.
Yep. So
you said the goalie got 2 penalties too, right?
I had a Billy Smith from the Islanders on back-to-back goalie rating checks, got penalties.
Wow.
Which is, yes. So it's like, well, pick your player to serve for this. Like, what? So
that's funny, 2 goalie penalties.
It is. I was laughing. The game I played today, Wednesday, was the Islanders and the Kings, and the Margin Rappers almost came back to win. But again, another penalty slog, but no fights. No majors, all lots of matching 4-minute coincidentals.
In my basic Strat hockey, I don't think I've had any major penalties. I don't even get a major.
The big difference between the two is that apparently when Hal Richmond created the Strat hockey, he was not a big fan of fighting. Of course, in the mid-'70s was right in the middle of the Broad Street Bullies era. It's the reason why my mother didn't let me watch hockey growing up, because of that. You know, no ho-hos, no Twinkies, and get that hockey stuff off. You're not watching that. That's going to corrupt your mind. Anyway, and so it's hard. You need to have people with the right penalty ratings and roll that, or get that 19 or 20 on the D20 to even think about having a fight. You can get lots of matchings. Gretzky had a matching for me today. That was kind of funny.
Wow, yeah.
But anyway, so that's what I've been playing. And so I guess to cross over to the crossover, the first crossover games I can think of.
Oh, well, let's get to see what Edie's playing.
Oh,
yeah.
Well, we talked about Battlefield 3. Borderlands 3. We've been playing a ton of Borderlands. You and I both, and I've been playing it single player and with a couple of other people. And it's still just a tremendous, tremendous game. Both as a console, as a single player, and as a multiplayer. It's just I can't recommend this game enough. If you liked any of the other Borderlands games, it is more of the same. If you hated Handsome Jack Collection and hated Tales from the Borderlands, this is the game that's going to make you fall back in love with the series.
I love the sense of humor in that game and the way it's designed.
Yeah, and as you go, you're still fairly early in. The sense of humor really does start to pick up. Because one of the things that we had an issue with is we thought that the sense of humor was a little
flat.
Little flat. It picks up a lot. It picks up a whole lot. Pretty much as soon as Ice-T shows up in the game, yes, Ice-T is in the game.
That's fine.
And he's awesome. Then you begin to realize, okay, it's got its groove.
Nice.
Yeah.
Anything besides Borderlands 3?
Nothing.
No? Pretty much playing that, yeah.
Yeah, that's it.
All right, so hang on. Let me cue up the music, Ron's favorite music, as we go into our main segment, crossover games. All right, so we were talking about what to talk about here, and we said, there's been a lot of games that were either on the tabletop that have gone digital, or a lot of games on the video end that have come to the tabletop. I think of games like Uno, where you played, and now you can play that on the Xbox or the PlayStation. You can even Battleship, was a game that I play a lot of on the PlayStation. It's really fun. You sit down and you launch your salvo. You play a game of Battleship now. In Dungeons and Dragons now was typically a dice game, and now you can play Dungeons and Dragons on the PC as well. And I know Ron's been doing that from time to time with some people in the community. So yeah, we want to talk a little bit about games that we've played on the tabletop and on the video, or maybe some of the pros and cons. So yeah, Ron, why don't you kick things off?
Well, the first crossovers really were the old TV game show ports. Password, Concentration,
right?
Family Feud, which was no fun if there was only two of you because someone had to run the board. That's how it started. But goodness, there was even a Pac-Man board game, if you want to think of it that way. And I think, was there a Space Invaders board game?
I'm sure there was. That was an era where the board games were kind of almost a throwaway.
Yeah.
You weren't actually considered to play them. You bought them because you were a fan, and we played them twice, and then they went into the closet, and then they got sold, and now you wish you still had them because they're worth something. But
yeah, exactly. And they were terrible
games. No, they were never really, I don't want to say never really meant to be played, but they were afterthoughts.
I remember
the main IP.
They had some TV show games that come out on board. In fact, I saw a few of them at the flea market I went to.
Bunch. I played the Brady Bunch board game.
Happy Days, I think they had one. $6 Million Man. Yep. And they were all terrible. You played them, and you're like, oh man, I love the show, but I don't want to play these. And they were terrible.
Yeah, it was the equivalent of like buying throwaway plastic cups with your favorite character on them. They weren't ever considered to be anything but plastic tat that you bought for way too much money.
But I think, Dave, you're right. I think the first ports of games that you could play both actually in person and on a PC were the card games. I had an early cribbage solitaire simulator. In fact, I think solitaire really just kind of took off as a game after it got Microsoft put it on there.
Yeah, on their first Windows platform. Yeah,
one of the first board games that went digital in the earliest days of computing was chess.
Yes,
of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had a Star Wars chess game from my very first computer, which I think was like a 486 DX or something, and it was 18 discs. And,
oh my goodness!
And you would put these 3 1/4 discs in one at a time and load the game. And the game was so big it took up nearly my whole hard drive. So if I ever wanted to do anything else, I would have to delete the game, and then when I wanted to play it again, I'd have to reload it every time. But that's what it was back in the day, and it was Star Wars people playing chess. The original Star Wars, obviously.
That's right. Crazy.
But that's what you used to have to do back in the day. So yeah, chess came to video in that sense. And one of the pros about that is, though, you could play by yourself. You could play the computer. So when a lot of these board games went to video or whatever, you didn't need two people. And that's what made it fun, is that, boy, I can play chess by myself. I can play cribbage by myself. I can play hearts by myself.
Yahtzee for the Apple IIe dated from 1978, and it had a very basic, terrible AI. And if you wanted to roll against it, fine. If you just wanted to be bored and play 6 games by yourself, you could. But even games like Zelda, the early text adventure games were very much a straight tabletop port, and you pick up sticks and
right,
that sort of thing, and it would generate a random number. Or actually, those were very interactive, but they weren't necessarily random. You get all by a monster,
right? But the board games have hit such a resurgence. For a while, it was nothing. When video games came out, video games took over the market, especially for children, and board games were seen as being a children's playtime. It wasn't, or maybe a family playtime, but really it was about interacting with your children. Now, I would say particularly in the last 5 years, but I would say starting 10 years ago, we started to see a lot of board games becoming more than just family playtime that was not dealing with a screen, like pulling your kids away from the screen and forcing them to play a video game. Now, 30-somethings, 40-somethings, 20-somethings are actually playing board games. And it used to be the ultimate board game being Dungeons and Dragons, was what only thing that nerds did. And now Dungeons and Dragons is mainstream. It took them, 34, close to 40 years for them
About
to get
40
mainstream.
years old, yeah.
Now Dungeons and Dragons is mainstream, and board games are mainstream. Board games are something that people choose to do as adults, as opposed to making it something that you do with your children to keep your children engaged. That's not a screen-based entertainment.
Yeah, there was a long time that Dungeons. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Ron. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Look at the card games. I mean, you got Pokemon for the kids, and Yu-Gi-Oh for the teens, and Magic. I mean,
Magic was the first card-based game that became its own phenomenon.
And
I could be wrong. I'm no historian, but that's the one that just really took off. And it's no surprise that it was also Wizards of the Coast, which is also the ones that did D&D. It's the same company.
Okay, and there's Magic you can buy Magic on Steam.
Absolutely.
Hearthstone is that type of game that was put on super steroids. I don't know if that's an actual card game itself or just on the computer.
And in some cases, you have not now, because of the burgeoning market. And well, it's the market for board games is very interesting, because in order to make a video game, it takes millions and millions of dollars. And yeah, you might get very lucky and sell $1 billion worth, but 99.9% of video games are a huge amount of money going in, and you might make your money back. Board games have a very low entry as far as the initial investment. It does not take nearly as much to make a card game as it does to make a video game. And they can now sell as well, if not better, with a far greater profit margin. Look at the ultimate game the ultimate card game that brought everybody into playing card games, like the mainstream. And that was not Words with Friends. God dang it. We were talking about Zynga on the last show.
Cards
Against Humanity.
That's not one you play with the kids.
No, you don't play it with the kids. And that was really the first one. It's like, this is not for children. This is for grown-ups. And it is got grown-ups in mind. And Cards Against Humanity makes so much money that they literally throw the money away. And the whole premise of them being despicable people, they throw their money away very publicly, doing stupid stuff like buying sections of the southern border of the United States to prevent anybody from building a wall on it. They just they buy themselves gold-plated dildos, if I can say that on the show. Gold-plated sex aids, and tell everyone how they have bought gold-plated sex aids.
It's Buffalo Bills apparel.
Right.
Do they have ponies made of diamonds like in Borderlands?
They have ponies, right? What was it? Butt pony, or was butt stallion?
Butt stallion. Yeah.
They bought themselves. They are essentially Handsome Jack. So then, when Cards Against Humanity made so much money, that's when a bunch of companies started to sit up and take notice that they could actually, if they made a good board game, they could make a lot more money on a good board game than they could on a throwaway bad board game. And now you're starting to see a bunch of video games that are going to board games.
Exactly.
Which you've never seen. You saw board games go to digital, but you never really saw digital going to board games. And now you have things like Dark Souls has a board game. Let's see, it's another. Resident Evil has a board game. You see anime that has board games that are really good.
Yeah.
I think
amazing amount of board games on anime.
Metal Gear Solid, I think, is coming out with one. Yeah, and for a while, you guys were touching on it, that only geeks play Dungeons and Dragons. In fact, you got made fun of back when I was a kid if you played
You got
Dungeons and
beat up.
Dragons. And then
you got beat up for that.
And in board games, it's like, I don't play board games because video games were all the rage. I really wasn't playing board games for a while either. And now, do you think now, and a few people have brought this up on with comments on the show in the past, that people are on their phones and their computers so much that it feels good to unplug and sit in front of a game now?
Absolutely. Right. You know,
Yep.
for me, I kind of have to do the computer thing because of limitations and stuff, but it's so much more fun to sit there and use your own imagination. You're the one that, you know, what I might picture in my head during an action may not be what you picture in your head. It's equally amount of fun, but it's a case of learning to unwind and use that imagination instrument between your ears.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's a relaxing thing to do, as opposed, you know, I mean, you guys do the first person shooters, and there's a whole bunch of role playing games for the console and the PC and all that, and it's fun to do in a group. But there's just something different about even on a PC port of a cards and dice game or of a board game that just makes you take that half step back and unwind.
Mm-hmm.
What's kind of fun too is that, remember when you were a kid and you were playing board games and you didn't know the rules and you just made it up, and you're like, new rule, this is how we're going to do this is how we're going to do that. That's kind of how I feel when I play some of these games, because sometimes I don't quite understand the rules, or this would make more sense to do it like this, and you can just change it on the fly, whereas a video game, there's options, but you can't.
You're limited to what you do.
are limited to what you can change.
College before I realized that if you landed on free parking in Monopoly, you didn't get the money in the middle.
No.
But how many times did we just give the money out anyway? You know, we just say, just take
house
the money.
Rules.
Yeah, house rules.
Yeah.
Everyone gets money. You know, I don't know how many times I played Clue, okay? I still don't know how to play Clue, but I know we were all playing it wrong as a kid. Whereas
I played it right. I loved Clue.
I couldn't figure out.
The only board game for me was Clue.
But if
I played a lot of it.
Conservatory with a candlestick.
That's right. Colonel Mustard.
But we played it in 4th or 5th grade, and we didn't play it right. I know we didn't play it right because no one knew how to play. But we just played and had some fun. You made the best of it, and when you get it on the video games part of it, there's, like I said, you're limited to what you can change. You can't make it 100% yours. It's like, you know, and then you go over a friend's house and
some of them Uno,
some you can't.
Uno actually supports on the console version of it, supports house rules. So you can actually make adjustments to the rules because everybody played Uno differently in every single house. There was the house rules. A lot of those games actually offer house rules. Granted, you can't make up a rule out of whole cloth, but they will give you a choice of a list of rules that were the frequently used house rules, you know, like the ones that most people like. If there were house rules, those are the most common ones that were used.
Right.
I did not know until last week, so I was 47 when I learned this, that in Uno we always played lowest score wins, but I was watching some video and it was like, no, you take everyone else's points and they're yours. And then the person like, I've never played that way. It was always, I went out, I get 0 and 0 is good. It's like golf, lowest score wins.
Yep. And then also consider that there are video games that aren't specifically, it's my husband doing laundry.
I see that.
There's the laundry video game. But there's specific video games that had a card aspect to them that were not, that was like kind of like side activity, but the game became so popular that they actually released a card game separately. The Witcher. The Witcher was an RPG, a massive open world RPG. Well, actually, really wasn't that very open world, but it was a massive RPG that is based on a book series from Poland. Witcher 3, very, very popular. Rated one of the best games of all time because it was just that good. And in The Witcher, at some point, you can enter into a pub, and inside the pub, the people in the pub are playing this game called Gwent, which is, I guess, the equivalent of like poker or something in the Witcher
So
series.
they created like a Quidditch, for instance.
Right, a Quidditch, right? Like a Quidditch is for Harry Potter. Gwent was for The Witcher. The Witcher was so popular, they've actually released a card game. Not only can you play Gwent on the console separately as its own game, you can actually buy physical board game of Gwent and play Gwent in real life. So it's the whole digital to dice and dice to digital crossover has so many aspects to it. And then let's talk about mobile. This thing, actually, where's my phone? Because this is I actually have my old phone out here. The mobile games and the iPhone really changed mobile gaming. I mean, board gaming. Some of the most earliest, and even now, some of the most popular board games you can find easily on phones. Go Battleship.
Yep.
Another one. Exploding Kittens is a board game that is massively popular, and it's now going mobile. Uno, you can play it. And then there's the other direction. A very, very popular mobile game called Reigns, which it was never a card game originally, but it was kind of like swipe left, swipe right, a little bit like Tinder, and how you make your decisions. It became. My husband wants to know how I know what Tinder is. I've heard of Tinder.
I've heard of it.
But it's now just had a successful Kickstarter to create a board game, a real life board game based on the mobile game. So the whole digital, originally, like you said, it was like digital being television shows to board games, and you never had board games to digital. They tried to do board games to digital with television shows. Those didn't work. Video games took people away from board games, and you had to kind of claw the kids back. Now board games are bigger. Now board games are adult. And now there really isn't a line between digital and board game.
No, in fact, maybe if you want to go on the multiplayer massive games, probably the biggest battleship thing is World of Warships.
World of Warships,
which is what you play with, simulated versions of that, and of course it's not realistic, but it's Battleship. You find out where the ship is, you blap the crap out of it,
right,
and hope not to get sunk.
Right, and same thing with then that led to World of Tanks, which is so World of Warships and World of Tanks, two huge video games.
Yes,
that really all started with a board game. So the line between digital and dice. It used to be that the alternate way of playing was a throwaway. It was just getting you to dish out some money because the kids were asking for it. Now it is a legitimate income source, and especially if you're going from a digital to the dice, can be an incredibly lucrative way to leverage your IP for a very low amount of money and making a ton of profit on it.
And thankfully it's gotten beyond the let's make a version of Monopoly with it type deal.
Right. Exactly. Monopoly's still king as far as the Parker Brothers world, but that doesn't even the popularity of Monopoly pales in comparison to Cards Against Humanity. Just doesn't even come close as far as the profitability of that.
Axis and Allies is another one that's now is a full-blown computer port, and of course an adult board game to begin with. That's not one you're pulling out in front of the kiddies. All right, let's go blow up Germany now.
Risk Carcassonne is another card game that went to digital and was very successful as a digital game, as a console game, and in a lot of ways opened up the market of digital players that may have never played Carcassonne but then discovered it. Like I never played Carcassonne on a physical game, but I played the hell out of it on a console.
Did you notice it too? Edie and myself, we go to the PAX shows, PAX East, PAX. She goes to PAX West. She's come out here several times to PAX East, and they always had this section of the tabletop stuff. Remember that? And we would stop in, and then there'd be these gigantic tables with the figures on them, and everybody's around playing. And then they had a whole other line of tables of people playing the card games you talked about. It took up a good chunk of the floor space there, some of these board games. And now you're seeing things like Hockey Blast from Play Games is coming to the Boston area, and they're having their hockey commissioners tournament, and they're going to be at this Battleground Games and Hobby in Norton, Mass. Okay, now there's a Battleground Games and Hobby right next to the Kowloon here in Saugus too. So you're seeing these shops pop up that have these games. In fact, I went into one in Saugus and I bought some dice, and it's like the front of it's like a little store, and the back's all these tables to play games, and people go there and play games. In fact, one of the hockey sponsors for my Eastern Mass roller hockey is Alpha Omega Hobby in Quincy, another hobby shop that plays games. So you're seeing these board game places now start popping up all over the place, which board game places...
Because adults are buying them for themselves as opposed to adults buying them for their little kids.
Yeah, and
store I used to work at would do Yu-Gi-Oh tournaments every other week, and at its peak, we were having 30 kids coming in to play Yu-Gi-Oh.
Yep.
And it would sometimes there would be parents in there, but they generally between 8 and 20 years old. And we would sell the Magic cards. We would, if we got a new release of cards, whether it was Yu-Gi-Oh or Magic, hundreds of dollars in sales. There'd be kids that would be coming in, or college kids coming in with hundreds in cash.
Right. And now there are professional Magic players and professional Yu-Gi-Oh players. There's not many of them, but they are pros. That's what they do for a living, and they make a lot of money doing it.
Yeah.
So it's becoming a legitimate career choice.
Well, you look at the esports thing, and especially League of Legends. On Twitch, when those tournaments are going on, there are 100,000 people watching it.
Yeah.
100,000 people. And that's the wave of the future. I would think.
And and you were mentioning about PAX. PAX started out as a video game and board game show in Seattle, and then after many years and growing popularity, they turned it into a PAX East. They opened up a PAX East in the Boston, and then they did a PAX South in San Antonio. Now they have a PAX Australia, and those were always and still remain being a combination of board games and video games. But just, I want to say last year, maybe the year before, there's now what they call PAX Unplugged in Philadelphia once a year, which is just board games. And that shows how popular these things are, not only to the players, but also to the manufacturers, because there is such if your board game takes off, it's like having a best-selling novel. It's literally millions of dollars that you can make off of it for a very, very small amount of money of investment to create the game and to produce the game, because it's very cheap to build, to manufacture a game once the rules are set in place.
Dave and I have a friend who created his own boxing game. It took him about 9 months, I think, to put it together and play tested it, and was surprised when he released it, the response he got to it. And again, one of those things that it just wasn't, I don't know what it cost him to do that, but it wasn't horrible. As you said, the point of entry was very small.
Very small. It's really just the work and the creativity and the cleverness of creating a game and playing it with a lot of people, so that you can see how it's being played and making tweaks to the rules so that you can get that game so good that
yes, absolutely. Off. And we haven't even talked about wargaming. I don't know. I know you don't really do any wargaming, Dave, do you?
I don't think he does.
No, I haven't done any of that. No.
You know, and it's just kind of daunting. I've dabbled in it, but it's like I get confused. I run right back to sports pretty quickly because I know that very well. But if you're familiar with Vassal,
I've not heard of
no,
Vassal.
okay, Virtual Advanced Squad Leader, which is a program that will basically turn your pure board game into something that can be played multiplayer. So let's say, you know, I'm here in Vermont, Dave's in Hockeytown, and you're on the West Coast, and we can board game du jour and all play it together virtually online.
Right. Yeah, there's another one on Steam that's called Tabletop Simulator.
Yeah, I've seen it. I haven't bought it, but
yeah. And I've played D&D via Skype with the Tabletop Simulator, and it works great.
is it?
There's a number of digital portals that allow you to play D&D cross country or
Fantasy
internationally.
Grounds. I've done that.
Yep.
That's a pain in the tushy program, but we've done it.
Yeah. So, and the other aspect of a game, of a board game being much less expensive to produce than a video game is that because it costs less, it turns a profit sooner. You don't have to sell 1 billion copies in order to pay for your overhead. You can sell 10,000 copies and pay for your overhead and make a nice profit. So it all works very well. And board game players are very social. If
by nature,
you play a video game that's a great video game, you have to make a point of telling someone or starting your own podcast to tell people about games that you like. With board games, you invite someone over to the board game, or even card games. It's just literally, it's plastic and paper. You bring someone over, you play it with them, they're convinced, they go out and get a copy, play with their friends, and it becomes very much more viral than a video.
I mean, who doesn't like to play cribbage or canasta or Yahtzee or any of the very basic stuff that's been ported over the years to do it with a sports thing? I don't think I played Stratomatic, Dave, by myself for the first year. It was all you do. This is something you do with a bunch of geeky sports nerds.
What's interesting with that, with the whole Stratomatic thing here, and even some of these other games, is that, I haven't heard of some of these, and I'm playing them now, and I'm introducing to my friends, and they're like, wow, I've never heard of this, and this is really fun. And a lot of these games now, whether it's the video or the board game version, is you can now play yourself, like by yourself, which, back in the day, a lot of the board games, like you said, like Family Feud, you needed more than 2 people to play it. Any other game, you couldn't play by yourself. They've now created a whole slew of games, especially the sports games, where you can just sit on a table and play by yourself. And now if you want to play with people, you can. But, I mean, you make the decisions for both teams, and you do that, too, even on your channel with all the sports games you play on the PC. And that's fun because you're not at the mercy of, geez, do I have somebody to play with today?
My wife could give 2 poops about the stuff that I play, and that's fine. It's not why we're married. Oh, no, you're going to learn all about the 2004 Red Sox. No, she doesn't care. And that's, and before with that, it just, one of the cons of board gaming, or that, as you know, Dave, from playing the Strat hockey, is footprint size. And if you're going to play a cards and dice sports game, part of the allure of that is the stats. Do you really care how much money you made playing virtual fast money on Family Feud? No, but when you're 13, you don't want to be the one slinging back the thing so 2 other people can play. Or Pyramid was like that, for instance. Password was a good one because you just put the same cards in and didn't, on the honor system.
Yeah.
And do that with 4. Concentration was a good one too, because you could just roll up the thing and don't look. But anyway, if you're, depending on what your interests are, that's the great thing about a computer port of a game. Your spouse doesn't have, or your partner or whatever, doesn't have to do what you want to do, and vice versa. I mean, can you imagine sitting through Candy Crush back in the 80s on a board game version?
Yeah.
No, it's like, what are you doing? I'm playing Candy Crush. It would be like playing Uno Solitaire. Like, Why? Why would you do that?
Yeah.
Right.
Lose, Parker Lewis. You just can't lose.
It is tough trying to play some of those games by yourself there, but they've done a good job. Some now, Edie, I know that you used to get together with our other co-host Nick on the Gamehounds, and you guys like go to each other's houses and play games sometimes too, right?
Yeah, he has a game night. It's a game night, especially for the millennials, of which I am not. I'm not going to say how old I am, but I'm not a millennial. I'm older than both of you, put it that way. But for millennials, game night is their thing, and it I think has a lot to do with the exaltation of the nerd. Back in my day, the nerd was the guy who got, and the girls who got beat up by the popular kids. Now the nerds have the money, and the money makes you popular. And now it's with so many, with the nerd being okay, in fact, something to be reveled in. You've got the nerd things that we all did that we got our ass kicked for. Things like games night, where it's 20 somethings and 30 somethings and even 40 somethings getting together and all playing games.
Do you think that might be because they didn't grow up playing the board games like we did? That they grew up with the video games. Do you think? And do you think that now they have a chance to sit down at the table and play? That's an allure to them?
I think it's a combination of that, and that they grew up in an era where video games were social. We grew up in an era where a video game was, it started out being social. You had to play with your brother or sister sitting in the couch next to you. Then it became antisocial because these were adult-ish type games, but they were single-player games, and you sat in front of a computer and you played 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 and you didn't really interact with anyone. And then there came the Xbox One or original Xbox and the Xbox 360, where people could actually talk to each other, and you could have friends lists, and you could play co-op online, and it became social. And that brought society back into the social aspect. When I say society, back into game playing. And then, of course, board games saw the resurgence because of that.
Think of it this way, Dave. You joked with me about a boo-boo I made in a football game last year, the infamous walk-off safety. And if I had been playing that game by myself and not with other people, I'd have forgotten that a long time ago.
Lost to history.
But because of the social aspect of that game and the fact that I had 8-9 people watching that, and someone won't let me ever forget that with good reason. It just kind of cemented that this, for what I do, made it worthwhile. I mean, you're going to go and say to somebody, oh, I heard you were doing this project. How did it come out? And you could say, oh, blah, 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 and someone will be half interested. But when you're sitting there with other people, we did a game night. We had younger friends, and they would come over, and we would have dinner and play Risk. And it didn't really matter who won. Australia and Siam is always the most important countries to hold because they're hard to get to. Right. But it's that, as Edie was saying, it's that social interaction that makes it worth the while, as opposed to sitting in your room at 3 a.m. playing Snakebite and wondering if you can get to level 100. I mean, yeah, might be able to do it, but no one else is going to care.
Nobody cares.
Right.
Yeah, I think it is fun sharing your games. In fact, the hockey game I played there, I was streaming that on the computer, and that's the game that the screen went black.
Yeah,
I was streaming it, and you can still go back on YouTube and watch it. And the screen went black, and I says, "Oh, hang on a sec, my game crashed. I got to reboot the game." And all of a sudden, a notice come up and said the lights went out in the rink. There's a delay. The lights went out in the rink, and it was part of the game. And I got it on YouTube, and
nice.
I was at a forum or somewhere, and someone posted, "Hey, something really crazy happened to me the other day. The lights went out." And I went and I linked my video and put the exact time the lights went out, so people could actually see what he was talking about because I had it saved. That was really cool. And like Ron's thing, Ron had a couple of weird things happen in his games, and they're all saved. And we were streaming those, and it's part of the community, and that made it real fun.
Yeah, but that interaction, even if you're playing, because it sounds kind of weird. I mean, the whole idea behind Twitch is honestly kind of weird. You're going to sit there at your computer
And watch somebody else play video games.
and watch someone else play games.
Right.
And I've gotten sucked into it. Like, oh yeah, if you find a game that you like to play or want to know more about, because that's how it starts, and then you get sucked in for hours watching somebody else play a game, and then people give that person money.
Right.
I mean, that's unfathomable.
It is, but
somebody gives them lots of money, billions of dollars if you add it all up.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It's just absolute, but it's the social aspect of it, which works so well in a board game, because really, I mean, Dave and I do, I guess you could say board gaming solitaire, but no, it's sitting there with buddies and doing whatever, whether it's Risk or D&D or Puerto Rico or any of the Euro games.
But what they've done too, this kind of, I don't know if you guys have seen these new things that are coming out now, is they now have these escape room board games that you can play at your house. Yeah, in fact, I bought one when I went into the board gaming store. It's $15. It's called Unlock. Okay. And I haven't played it yet. It's still sealed up, but the only thing is it's a one playthrough type of game. Okay, and they incorporated.
That's the price of a pizza for a night's worth of entertainment.
Yeah, and so you can play by yourself or you can play with people. And the idea is you pull out the cards and you get clues, and it ties in with an app on the phone or your iPad, and the iPad counts down. So it's like you only have so much time to do it. If you run out of time, you can still finish the game, but the idea is see if you can get it done in an hour or whatever it is. And once you get the clues, you type it in, and then it tells you what to do, and then it flips over something else or gives you another clue. And so you're trying to escape the room playing cards. And there's a new one now that I've seen on Facebook where they send it to you in the mail, and you open it up, and it's like the end of the world scenario type of thing. And I forget what they're called, but I'm seeing all these new physical style games come in now where you open up and play on the table, and before it was always video games, and now you're seeing this again. We saw a little resurgence, I think, of people wanting the physical stuff.
Well, the other thing is too he's talked about is that it's no longer Milton Bradley Parker Brothers Hasbro that produce everything. You can, as an independent game company, can pretty much produce what you want, and with quick, Kickstarter, and that really you get people with genuine interest who like your idea and may refine that even further. And so you're able to, because of the internet and Amazon, get a game on the market that the designers at Parker Brothers wouldn't have touched 25 years ago. And here you go now.
Right.
Boom.
Kickstarter really also altered that whole landscape so much, because that low cost is still a not no cost. And Kickstarter not only covers the cost of putting something out, it also is proof of concept. It's a market. It works socially, that if when you put it out, you will have it in people's hands playing, because that's the key for a good board game. Getting it into enough people's hands so that it can go viral. It's like virusing, not virusing,
Plague Inc.
Plague Inc. It's like Plague Inc. You've got to infect a certain amount of people before everything takes off, and you've got to get those games or convince someone to pick up a copy of that game so that they will play it with their friends, so that their friends will go out and buy it, and that they tell two friends and they tell two friends, and so on and so on.
You're seeing that more in the retro computer gaming thing. I mean, they are still producing new games, Dave, for the Commodore 64.
Wow.
No.
Yes.
I know they're making some for the Atari 2600 because we've seen some of those at the video game shows.
Yes. If you go and look at the 8-Bit Guy channel on YouTube, he's come out with a game called Planet X2. And it's come out for the Commodore 64, and he's currently working on a DOS compatible version that would work with your retro equipment if you have it. And there's others too. But yes, it's literally new games for 8-bit machines, the stuff that we don't. Yeah, 8-bit. The 8-Bit Guy is the channel, And it's
look that up.
fascinating. And he's created this real-time strategy game in 2018, 2019 for something that for a computer that was designed in 1982. Because just like you said, you show it to one person and, oh yeah, I had that machine and I love this game, and it just kind of goes on and on and on from there.
Right. And Kickstarter is a wonderful way to get enthusiastic people who are going to want to play it as soon as you put it in their hands, instead of like handing it out on a street corner. Chances are most of them are going to go in the garbage. These are people that are actually covering the cost. It's seeding the public, and it is a proof of concept that if you can hit your goal on a market, on a Kickstarter, it says that you've got a good idea, you need to run with it. And if you don't hit it with the Kickstarter, then you know that maybe we need to go back to the drawing board, either in our marketing or in the way that the game is designed. So it's serves so many purposes to have your game on Kickstarter.
Yeah.
Case in point, speaking of the digital to dice crossover, for years they have made D&D games for computers that aren't, and with varying degrees of success. There's a new one that's actually on Kickstarter right now. I think it's just down to its last few days, maybe, called Solasta. Solasta.
That sounds like a bad diet.
It does, doesn't it? It sounds like something that you take antibiotics for. But Solasta, that is a...
Remember, take the whole bottle.
Take the whole bottle. Go through your entire... May cause burning and intestinal leakage. Solasta.
If you eat too many chocolate Twinkies, you get Solasta.
Solasta.
Vitamin enriched.
Vitamin enriched. Solasta. But Solasta is it's a PC game where they have gotten permission from Wizards of the Coast to use the Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition rule set, so that you can play using the rule set and feeling very much like a real D&D game, with the roles and everything. And a lot of it is happening behind the scenes that you don't see. But if you understand the way that D&D plays, you understand things like how the roles, how decisions are being made by the computer. To do D&D, a D&D campaign on your PC so that you could play it alone, which is kind of funny that you were going from a very social game. Right. It's not an AI, because that's the thing. It's not an AI. You can get a D&D setting type game and play with an AI. Witcher is one of them, a bunch of different stories. All it changes is the story. That's, for all intents and purposes, a skin. This is the rule set. When you're playing it, movements are exactly the same as if you were moving on a board with a bunch of people.
You wouldn't need a DM, is that?
The game is the DM. The computer program, the game itself, is the DM. You are the player. And the DM is also not only DMing for you, it is also DMing. It is essentially playing the players, other members of your party. But it's all the same rule set, and it feels like you're playing D&D. And it's hasn't taken the rules and tried to hide it. It's actually taken the rules and leaned into it, because so many people like to play D&D, and sometimes it's very difficult to play
D&D.
It's
hard to find a game. We've tried to do it a couple times online, and it's just trying to coordinate schedules together and trying to learn is
flaky members. And then and also there's an aspect that comes from being a woman playing D&D, especially if you try and play it digitally, because I don't have anybody to play with it in person here, like in my neighborhood. Like Dave says, you have to go drive an hour to go play Stratomatic. I don't really want to drive an hour once a week to play D&D, but then again, I don't want to not play it every week, because then people stop coming.
Right.
So it's finding that it's very difficult to get a really good D&D group together that will play consistently. So you end up going to Tabletop Simulator, playing it over Skype. And as a woman, I get inappropriate comments, inappropriate play. My character is getting, like, the first thing that happens as soon as you walk into the new game with a bunch of strangers is that they're all like grabbing, elf grabs dwarf's tits, and it's like this is not comfortable. Not fun for me. Hilarious for you. Not fun for me, especially when it's I don't know you people and you are groping my character or you're making inappropriate comments about my character. Can we just play the game?
Yeah.
Solasta allows you to actually play a D&D game and it feels like a D&D game without having to play with human beings and rely upon their foibles and their character flaws.
That sounds exactly like, Dave, the pure card and dice sports ports. Mm-hmm. The basic, the APA Go, which is APA Basic Baseball that you can play on their site, or all the Stratomatic games. It gives and replay the replay lines.
Right.
Pure. We're just putting this out there, and in some cases, we'll give you an AI to play against, or you can play by yourself and not have to worry about it. But here you go. Here's not only you go, but you can see the dice rolls. You can see how the results were got. Right. Achieved and all that. And it sounds exactly like that. That's going to be really popular because my wife will play. She was going, before we couldn't really all get together again, we had set up a character for her to play because that was, most of my gaming is, as I said earlier, not something that she's really interested in. But honey, you got to play Guy Lafleur in the first line. What? No, yeah. I don't. But that was something that we could do together as a couple. And so that was, but if that's something that the two of us could sit down and play when we wanted to play, when she felt like playing, and have a good time with.
Right. Now, as we kind of wind down our talk here, I want to hit one more little topic here. What do you guys think the pros and cons are for both? Pros and cons of a digital version of a game versus the pros and cons of a tabletop version of a game. We'll start with Edie.
Well, obviously the digital version of the game is easily accessible immediately all the time, whether you're awake at 2:00 in the morning or in the middle of the afternoon or in the evening. And the cons are that you lose the social aspect. The pros and cons for a digital game or for a board game, a physical version, is exactly the opposite. You have that social interaction. You have those moments like Ron mentioned about being able to refer to something that happened in the past and have that moment of connection in one of those, remember that time when that happened? But at the same time, you don't always get to do it. You don't have a chance to play with someone. People are flawed either in their schedules or in their personalities or whatever. It's exactly the opposite. They're mirror images of each other, and they both serve a purpose, and they are both valuable to have. I find that board games way more creative. Fascinating how a small change in rules can turn a so-so board game into a wild hit and super fun. So yeah, that's my pros and cons both.
Ron?
I think the biggest pro for the type of gaming that you and I normally do is for the PC is the stat keeping.
Right.
Because in sports gaming, most of the appeal outside of being able to go back and relive what it is you want to relive or recreate is, as you know, Dave, is keeping all the stats that go with it. I mean, it's nice that the computer can tell you Franco Harris had 23 carries for 75 yards. Are you going to go out and do that yourself? No. I would, but not everybody would. As far as the other type of gaming of that, again, rule tweaks, as Edie said, maybe you see something deeper within the game that you might not have picked up. Oh, I didn't realize that rule exists. But the biggest cons with board gaming is you got to have other people available to play. The biggest pro for board gaming is It's usually not a solitary, unless we're talking about sports games. Most of the time, it's not a solitary activity. It's part of an evening. Whether it's categories or whatever, or Cards Against Humanity. You're interacting with other people. You're having a very good time, hopefully, even if you're getting your butt whipped. And it's something that, if it goes well, you're going to want to do again. And that's the thing with solo computer gaming is, you can have a good time and you can set a record doing this or that, and then you're going to turn and no one's going to care.
Yeah, video games you zone out for, and you
Right.
can't zone out for a board game.
Right, exactly. And, you can just put on a YouTube video if you just want to zone out.
Right.
And so it kind of serves the same purpose. But I mean, you can't beat the social interaction with a bunch of board gamers. And it really doesn't matter what game it is. You're going to find it. I mean, you can be just as intense with playing Uno as you can anything else.
So. It was funny this weekend when I played the Stratomatic hockey with my uncle, how he was like picking up and touching the cards and looking at them, and he was a little older than me, so he played board games back when I was a kid too. But it's just the idea that it was just like, he's like, I've never seen this game, and he's looking at the dice and rolling the dice and touching the cards and looking at them, and it was just so different because it was something you could physically touch and look at the ratings right on the card. And when you play the games on the computer, you hit a button and something happens, but over here it's like you roll and then you look at the card and it says, okay, number 2 is a save, number 3 is a goal, number 4 is a penalty, or whatever it is, and that you're part of the game. You're really immersed in that, and that is really kind of fun with that. But again,
and it is the aspect of intergenerationality, is that if you'd have taken your uncle and said, hey, do you want to play NHL 20? It's like, he couldn't have played it.
Right, yeah. And anybody can sit down and play a board game once you learn it and the whole bit. In fact, I don't know if you guys saw, they just come out with a Jaws board game.
Really?
No.
And and
you're going to need a bigger table.
And it's a big
well done. Well done, sir.
Yeah.
I like that one.
It's so you have the board. I guess it's a two level game or 2-tier game, whatever you call it. You start off on the island, and each player has characters, and somebody actually plays as the shark. And
neat.
I don't know if you roll dice or flip cards, but there's certain things you need to do. So like,
should we get the hat too? So can we wear the shark fin on our head?
Yeah, so I think like Clint goes and gets the barrels. He's got to gather barrels and bring them to the dock to shoot into the shark. And
it's an asymmetric game, and you have one person playing the shark and everybody else plays.
Yeah, and Brody's got to go and close the beaches so nobody dies, and the shark is trying to eat as many people as it can. And then at some point, you get off the Amity Island and you flip the board over, and then you play on the boat itself. And so you're trying to kill the shark from the boat, and so if you get a chance, go check it out. There's been some reviews on YouTube, but there is a Jaws game. I don't know if it's out or coming out.
I gotta get that with Nick. I gotta get that.
It looked pretty complex, but it looked really fun. And the games coming out like that, they're really great. And there was another game I was watching too. It was some kind of a horror game where you were walking around on this island and there was the Dracula and the whole bit. And I'm looking at these board games like, wow, these look like these would be fun to play with people. I mean, as much fun as online play is, like I said, to getting together and actually playing a game, that would be kind of fun.
Just don't volunteer to play the dumb blonde girl.
Yeah, the first one in the water.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like playing the red shirt with the Star Wars
Trek,
game.
Yeah.
Don't wear the red shirt.
I never picked up on that until somebody pointed that out. So anyway, all right, so let's get some final thoughts here before we wrap up as we talk about crossover stuff, games that you can play digitally or on the board. Ron, any final thoughts to wrap this up?
Well, like I said, I think there are definite pros to either, but I think it depends on what you're looking for. In a sports sense, you get a good, there's goods and cards and there's goods on the computer. But nothing beats sitting down, having dinner with friends and pulling out a game and spending that evening there. It's all about the social activity. But when you want to be solo, you can be solo on the computer. So,
Edie?
My final thoughts are 2 different parts of your brain, and that's the beauty of gaming, that we're hitting a really wonderful time with gaming, in that there is no longer you're not a real gamer anymore. A gamer is a board gamer, a gamer is a video game player, a gamer is a mobile gamer, that we've I mean, we got a long way to go as far as total equality for everybody, but at least in the sense of the kind of games you play, the crossing between and the, oh, I don't do those kind of games doesn't happen anymore. That it is all about freeing your mind and tickling different parts of your brain, whether it's being a board game or whether it's being a video game, because they're very different and yet absolutely equal and valuable.
Man, my final thoughts are, it was probably 6 months ago or 7 months ago that I had a hard time playing some video games, that they seem to pass me by, and especially the sports games where my reaction times are not as good. And if I try to play a shooter game, I can't keep up with people anymore. And it was, I've talked about that on our Gamehounds show, probably even up to a year or so ago, when I said, man, I have to, succumb to the fact that I'm in my 50s and I'm just not as good, and I'm getting killed in all these little multiplayer shooter games because I'm not that good. And that was really hard to admit. And so I shied away from playing some of those games, and now I try to play the single-player games like Assassin's Creed and a whole bit. But when I stumbled into this cards and dice community, I can sit and play at my leisure on my tabletop, and I can relive teams from the past, and I can have so much fun. In fact, I'll play here right in front of me here. I'll set up a game, and then I'll go to bed. I'll get up in the morning. It's still there on the table, and I'll come down. I'll play a little bit, and then maybe play after work, or like I said, recently I played with my uncle, or I get a friend of mine that is laid up. He broke his leg, and he's had some serious health injuries, and I drove to his house. It was like a 45-minute drive. I drove to his house, and I bought him that shootout hockey game, and he's playing on the table, and he's laid up. He's like, I can't go anywhere. I can't drive. So I bought him a game to play, and he's playing on his tabletop, and he's like, man, he goes, I've watched everything on Netflix. There's nothing left to watch. I've been laid up for so many months. This game is fun. And he was banging out game after game after game by himself playing that game, and it was just fun seeing him do that. So for me, I like the option of both. I think some of the video game stuff, I'm not the target audience anymore. I can't do VR. I get sick doing VR. And every time I see, hey, guess what? We got this new gray VR thing, it turns me off, and I shy away from the video game thing. It's only been since playing Borderlands 3 for the last week that I've really get back into the video game thing. But so for me, it feels like video games have passed me by a little bit, and I'm glad to see the board games come into play, because now I can sit and play them, or pick up Jaws and go to somebody's house and, hey, let's play this crazy game here and see how it goes. And again, you can make up your own rules if you don't know what to do with the thing and have some fun with it. So we talk a lot about options and immersion on the show, and I think it's nice to have both, and it's nice to see the board games as some sort of resurgence. And like you said, they're a little bit cheaper to make in some cases. So you see, and Ron, in our community, we see a ton of independent people that have created their own games, and we've had some on the show.
Anthony, his boxing game, I mean, it's weird because the community thinks that sports board gaming is dying, but there are too many games almost on the market now.
I counted. I think I counted. I have 16 hockey games, cards and dice. 16. That's not computer. That's not console. I have 16 hockey games. Okay, that I've either tried or played or whatever. Some were free. Okay, some you just downloaded off some websites for free. Not stealing them. They're offered for free. Okay, on the I forget the name of that website now. Ron, what's the name of that website?
Sportsreplays.net.
Sportsreplays.net. There's people that post the games up for free. Some people put them up and they're for sale, and you got to send them $5 to play their game. And there's others like Strat that are the $40, $50, $60 games. So I mean, you have all kinds of price points, and I have them all. I have a ton of folders over here on my left of all the games.
All different levels of complexity too.
Yeah, some are very easy, some are very difficult, some I've taken to, but no joke, I have 16 hockey games. And hockey's not even the biggest. I imagine there's probably 100 cards and dice baseball games.
Oh, easily.
And so that's what you're looking at here. Whereas,
you should go to PAX Unplugged.
I'm thinking about
this year in Philadelphia.
Philly?
Yeah, Philly.
I'm thinking about going. Report for the Gamehounds. Get a press pass.
Absolutely. If you want me to get you a press pass for that, I would happily do that. And
you'd have a great time. You really would.
I think I would. Because one of the first games, and I've talked about this on the show, that I found was at PAX East. Oh, boy. I don't know if it was 3, 4, or 5 years ago. and it was a company from Connecticut, and they were playing this football game on the table with cards. And I was like, what is this? And I got talking to the guy, and he says, we also have a computer version, and that was called Sports Mogul, Football Mogul, and Baseball Mogul.
He's developing a baseball game.
Yep, and they gave me, I don't know if they gave me a disc or they gave me a code, and they said, you can play these for free. You know, you can play our last year's game for free, and I still play, you know, the Football Mogul. I don't know if it was 15, 16, or 17, but at PAX East, they were playing this card game, but they also had the digital version, so digital to dice. They had both, and that's what got me into this, because I started playing Football Mogul, and then I started playing the Action PC, and that's how I ended up meeting Ron with all that. So that was several years ago that I was at PAX East, the video game thing, that someone had a card game, and I wasn't so interested in the card game, but they had a computer version. And so it all ties in, and it's really, really cool how it does that.
It's about building the IP, and it all ties in, and it broadens the market and brings everybody in to play it in whatever form it is. It's just as long as all the forms are as good. There's no such thing as a throwaway card game anymore to make you buy stuff.
Yep, it's been a good time here. So anyway, that'll wrap up episode 14 of Digital to Dice, as we talked some crossover between video games and board games. So let's officially end it with some music. So once again, thanks to Metal Church for their song Living by the Numbers. This is our theme song here on the Digital to Dice podcast. I am Dave. I've been joined by Ron, and also my co-host from the Gamehounds, Edie Sellers, as we talk some crossover stuff today. Ways to get a hold of us, digitaltodice.com is the website. The text line, 978-751-DICE, 978-751-3423. And on Facebook, facebook.com/groups/digitaltodice. Ron, thanks for joining me again.
As always.
And Edie from the Gamehounds, thanks for coming on Digital to Dice.
Thank you for having me.
Yep. And gamehounds.net is where you can find the Gamehounds, and also Gamehounds vids on YouTube. And we will be live every Wednesday, 12:30 Eastern Time and 9:30 Western Time on Wednesdays, going live with our show as we talk video games and other things as well. So anyway, thanks for tuning in to Digital Dice. Bye-bye.